Good morning, everyone. My name is Piotr Paterek. I represent Aptiv. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us. I run automation and digitalization team in Aptiv. And maybe at the beginning, I would just say a few words what Aptiv is all about. Just like human beings, cars have a brain and a nervous system. So of a brain, you can think as of a set of the onboard computers with the software that compute all the data. And then the nervous system, the cables, the wires, the connectors that pass the data, the current, the signal from the different sensors, cameras, radars. So that's all what we design and produce for the biggest car makers. So we are automotive technology company. So apart from that, we are also big in software-defined vehicles, autonomous driving. We are a technology company. Moving to the next slide. As every large organization, we have a GBS organization, and I'm part of GBS. The largest center is in Kraków, Poland. We have a center in Juarez, Mexico, and Shizhou in China. Automation and digitalization team, very quickly. We started in 2020. All the work that we do is done by our team. We didn't outsource any of the work. And we are kind of, I would say, a mid-sized team. A few facts about automation team. Our platform of choice for RPA is UiPath. Our infrastructure sits on the Microsoft Azure. And one of the technologies that we use is Python and Elasticsearch. We have around 85 robots. I don't like this measure because, 85 robots doesn't mean much, right? I could make it 200, right, just for this presentation. But I think what kind of gives a sense of where we are is number of the transactions that our bots process in 2020. So that's around 2.6 million transactions and around 133 hours, man-hours saved through our bots. So just that was a quick sneak peek on Aptiv and on the team. And now we'll move to the case that I would like to present. We named this project Invoice Validation Check. So who was our customer? Our customer was a VAT compliance team that is basically responsible for the VAT compliance in the organization. So they are responsible for the VAT reporting, VAT declarations, and what fuels their reports, their declarations, is the invoice data, the invoices which we pay to our vendors. And for the scope that robot covers, there was around 30 to 40,000 invoices processed monthly, and the team does random checks of the invoices to see if there are any issues, if there are any mistakes, and if there are, they catch them and they turn them back for the correction. But they only scratch the surface of the problem because physically they were not able to check every single invoice, nor they had the technology to do this for them or to support them. So that was basically the problem statement of this project. To enable them to extend the scope of the invoice validation through the RPA and associated technology. So our initial observations were that, as I mentioned, they were not able to address the whole population of the invoices, nor they had the technology to support them. They had some macros that partially supported them, but they didn't do the magic. And also, whenever they used to run those reports, declaration at the end of the month. So whenever they detected a problem, it was already too late to fix it in the same period, or for example, a stop an invoice that could be paid to the wrong vendor. So that was a kind of time gap that we are also supposed to address. So what we did. I call it, in the middle, all those fancy icons, I call it a power box. So UiPath was the mechanism that was orchestrating different technologies. So basically, the way how it starts is that the robot downloads from SAP invoice data for the past month, right? And it applies different checks on every single invoice. So we have a basic check and a full check. The only difference between those two checks is that on the full check, robot opens an invoice image, reads the data, and then compares the data with the data that is already in the SAP for that invoice, just to make sure there are no any discrepancies. So first is the logic check. So, on each invoice, the robot checks if the VAT code was applied properly, if the VAT tax percentage is applied properly, if the invoice, if the VAT amount on the invoice is also correct. So there are those kind of straightforward logical checks that robot does. Then it checks if the VAT registration number of the supplier is placed on the invoice, and if it is, then it checks that if it's valid and correct. And to do that, it goes to the European portal where all the VAT registration numbers are and does the check. Then it does the duplicate check, right? Is there a chance that this invoice is a duplicate? So the robot checks that invoice against the 6-month-old data of all invoices that have been processed in the past. And then the cherry on the cake is the machine learning. So with the machine learning, you can just think of a vendor. Let's say name ABC vendor, right? And from that vendor, you receive invoices between 5,000 and 10,000 euros, right? And all of a sudden, you receive an invoice for 50K, right? So our machine learning will detect that this invoice is an anomaly, it's an outlier. There's something wrong with it, right? So hey, someone needs to check that invoice. So on machine learning, we check that on the invoice value, on the currency. We also check, we look on the invoice number pattern, because vendors have the invoice pattern that is more or less consistent. So we check if the invoice pattern matches the patterns that we have. Also, we look on the invoices that from vendors that we haven't received for a long time, for like 3 or 5 months. So this is what the machine learning does, and it's unsupervised one, meaning that we don't need to train it all the time. It's been trained at the beginning, and it kind of trains itself as it gets more and more data. And then we have OCR, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago. We also OCR invoices just to make sure that during the indexing invoices into the system, there has been no mismatch or mistakes. And at the end, we present to the VAT analyst a complete report with all the invoices, with the comments, with the colors, and with the respective comments saying that, hey, this invoice needs your attention, there is a possible mistake, and so on. And on this slide, this is a real case example where you can see, I will probably move closer. This is a true case. We did a full check on 1,500 invoices, and out of those 1,500 invoices, almost 600 invoices had possible mistakes that had to be verified by the analyst. And out of those almost 600 possible mistakes, 90% has been confirmed as a true mistake. So around 90% a hit rate. So that I think that quite well proves the efficiency of our automation. And the benefits that came out of this automation. So first, we were able to address the entire population of the invoices. We released the time for the analysts to do the granular check, so they didn't have to focus on kind of running those, doing those analyses, doing all the work that the robot does for them. We extended the scope and the quality. Just to give you an example, that we compared number of the errors that were detected prior to the automation and now, and we've seen 100 to 300 increase in number of the errors detected by the bot. It also had a positive impact on the cash flow. We pay less invoices to the wrong vendors, because we can actually, the robot runs those reports weekly, not monthly as it has been done manually. So we have still time to stop invoices and correct them and not pay them to the wrong vendors. So that's quickly all about this automation. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Questions? Oscar?
Yeah, hold on. Oscar, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, short. Actually, two questions. So before you started this, how much did you invest in your vendor master data? Because to optimize it and to make it recognizable, you need to also have a clean, deduplicated, enhanced vendor master data record to be.
Yeah, we haven't invested anything in vendor master data. However, there are quite a lot of errors, mistakes that are routed back to the vendor master data to correct their records.
I can understand. Nice approach, by the way. Nothing bad about this, but just interested in how that works. Second of all is, does it also read, say, line items? Because you could indicate, for instance, you get an invoice from link letters of lawyers provided in several countries, so you get one invoice a day. And how do you recognize actually the VAT coding? Because it comes from Warsaw, but the lawyers are delivered in the UK and in Germany on the same day.
Yeah, so we have basically we have a number of reference tables where we, for example, let's say a Turkish supplier should not use a EU VAT code, right? So we have those kind of reference data that the robot matches against the invoices. And answering your first the other part of the question, yes, we look on the header invoice data and also on the line level data.
Good, thanks.
Okay, last question, Rakesh.
Yeah, two parts of this one question. The first part was just in terms of your error rate, if I heard you correctly, did you say about 90%? What did you do with the people? Because that sounds like, and I'm sure it's not all down to the people, but did that trigger performance management exit of certain people in the organization?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, we've seen the increase in the number of errors detected between 100 and 300, depending on the entity and the company codes. Actually, the team is around, I think, 4 people, and believe or not, it was really hard to get this data on the how it was before and how it is now. I think they're a bit quite. I mean, sometimes it's difficult to show where you have gaps in the process, but I don't think it was a fault of anyone. It was just they didn't have enough workforce to address the scope that they were fighting against.
Okay. Right. And then the second part was I saw you mention intelligent OCR. I assume you were using UiPath document understanding or ABI, whichever. But I'm just curious around how long it took you to train the tool on the invoices, because we find machine learning is great sales pitch, but it takes a long time to really kick in. So I'm wondering what your experience is on that.
We use Tesseract, that's the open source. So to train it, it took us around 3 months. I mean, we use Tesseract when we deal with the invoice image, But if the data is machine readable, we use regular expressions, which are kind of pretty reliable. Yeah.
And your accuracy rate? Do you know percentage-wise?
You mean I mean, we don't measure the OCR accuracy rate on that case, but
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Piotr. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.